Hey guys, welcome back to Scream Queen Stream. You all know me by this time. I'm Jessica Cameron, and I am here at Dark Delicacies, so shout out to them with one of my favorite women in horror currently, Jenn Wexler.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited to meet you. I've known about you online, obviously, for a few years now. You live far away from me.
Yes,
right?
a little far.
You live in New York?
Yes.
Right, I always screw up, so you're in Brooklyn.
I'm in Brooklyn.
Thank God I didn't mess that up this time. Right, I'm Canadian, so we didn't study American geography as
Fair.
much as we should have.
Fair.
But you are here for business, here for work. Mm-hmm. Your latest film, The Ranger, came out everywhere on DVD, Blu-ray, VOD, etc. So definitely, you guys, before I get into too much detail, there's going to be a bunch of links in the description box below. So be sure to click there, get your copy, pay attention to independent films, and especially this lovely lady. So let's jump into it. So the first question I'm curious about, because I looked at your IMDb, and it appears that over the last 10 years, you've been really active in indie genre. But have you always been interested in genre, like even as a child?
Yes, absolutely. When I was a kid, I was that kid that would hang out in graveyards after school and try to get my friends to like come and do seances with me. I've always been into creepy stuff. When I was maybe 5 years old, I fell in love with a TV show that you may know called Are You Afraid of the Dark, which shot in Canada, I believe. Yeah. It's a Canadian TV show, which is amazing. Love that show. Still obsessed with it. Really excited for the reboot that they're going to do that's coming out later in the year. And then when I got a little bit older, I saw Scream, and that was really, I was 10 years old when Scream came out, and that was really the movie that made me realize, oh, there's an entire horror genre, and now I need to go back and, watch every movie that has influenced this movie. And then, horror movies kind of became a best friend for me when I was a young, teenager, when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. My family moved towns. So I had no friends in my new town, so horror became my best friend as I just tried to consume as much horror as possible.
And did it maintain that level of importance in your life as you grew up, or was there ever a point that you were kind of I'm not really into it?
No, I was always super into it, but I thought of it as I like horror movies. I didn't quite realize until I got a little bit older that there was an entire industry. There's an entire horror industry. So when I went to school in Philadelphia, the University of the Arts, where I studied screenwriting. And while I was there, I started doing an internship with a company called FearNet, which is a horror TV channel.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. And at the time, they were based in Philadelphia, so I was able to do my college internship there. And then when I graduated, it was at the exact same time the company was moving to Los Angeles. So I followed them out there. And then my first real full-time job was marketing coordinator at FearNet. So that was really cool because it allowed me to discover, as I said, horror as an industry, and to meet filmmakers and to see how you promote horror on social media. And this was also the same time that Facebook was becoming a thing and everything. So I got to control the FearNet Facebook page because I was the young new millennial girl who probably knew how to work Facebook. So that's what was happening at this time. It was very cool. Got to meet a lot of people, and actually that ended up leading me to start, while I was working there, I started making short films.
That's so fascinating. I love that FearNet is still talked about, because for me it was a very special site.
Yeah,
right?
There was so much. Everybody that worked there, we were on the 5th floor of the Lionsgate offices, so it was very corporate. Except for us, we were these cubicles with all these kids wearing horror T-shirts, and we had action figures and horror posters all around, and it was just a community of horror fans at its core. So it was cool.
What was the moment that you knew that you wanted to make films? Or do you remember?
I don't remember if there was a specific moment, but it's something I've always been interested in. I used to make, home films, movies and stuff. little sci-fi movies, like little alien invasion movies. Actually, I do remember the moment. So I think I was 15 years old, and I had a friend, and we were having this conversation, and my friend was like, I'm going to be a fashion designer. That's what I want to do with my life. I want to be a fashion designer. And I felt this pressure in that moment to like answer back with something cool. And I was like, well, I'm going to be a filmmaker. And so I think that's the first time I like said it out loud. So yes.
I love that. And then you did. So I was going to ask you if you went to school for film, but you just mentioned that you did.
Yes.
Did that help you? And if so, how?
Okay, so yes, it totally helped me, but I don't know if I would advise everybody go to school for film. It specifically helped me because, so my major was screenwriting, and my classmate, his senior screenplay, we all had to write screenplays when we were, like features when we were seniors, and his was a version of The Ranger. So years later, I was like, yo, you remember that when I decided I wanted to direct my first feature, I was like, yo, do you remember that script you wrote in college? Can you find that, and can we work on it together and update it per our older sensibilities, and can I direct it? So I'm so happy I went to film school because that's how I met him. You know, he created The Ranger. So, but also there were other great things about it. I really learned I just got to study screenwriting for like 4 years. So it really was a great practice for me in terms of writing, in terms of learning about things like 3-act structure and character development and everything. And also, similarly to what happened with The Ranger, I just felt like that time period was so awesome because I don't think I really appreciated it at the time, but it was such a great time period because I was like allowed to just come up with cool ideas. Like that was what my job was at that time. And I was more excited to be like running around partying in Philly. Like I wasn't even fully appreciating having that opportunity, but it was cool, came up with a lot of ideas. And now when I am like, oh, I need a new project, I need a new idea for this thing, I so often find myself going back to these things I first came up with when I was younger. So for those reasons, it's cool. I don't think it's for everybody, and I would advise anybody who is interested in making movies, like the way you learn how to make movies is to make movies. So my real advice is if you're really interested, you should go out and make movies, make short films, and also work on film sets and meet people who are making films and learn from working on sets, from PAing, and just learning from the different department heads and figuring out like what you want your path in film to be.
That's really, really great advice. So now I wrote it. So you're actually reading my mind as far as like how my questions are laid out. Because my next question was like, let's talk about your directorial debut as far as feature-length films go, The Ranger, which I was so excited about because I was, first of all, blown away with the marketing, which now that makes a lot more sense given your background and history. It's not often that I see an independent film promoted on social media where I'm like, they're doing a great job marketing that movie. So I was really impressed with that, but also I love the concept. I actually haven't seen the film. I come to Dark Delicacies to buy all my films, and if you were in Los Angeles, you should do that as well. And it's like the only film that they don't have here.
Maybe they will
have
soon.
it soon.
Yes.
But yeah, let's talk about The Ranger.
Yeah. So also, well, thank you for what you said about our social media, but also props to one of the producers, Heather Buckley, who is a social media crazy person, and she's awesome, and she is largely the reason why we've gotten the word out on social so well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what is I don't want to butcher it, I know what the storyline is, but let's give the audience a brief synopsis from your mouth.
Yeah, totally. So The Ranger is about a group of punk kids that get in trouble with the cops. So they go to the woods to hide out, where they come up against a park ranger he's a killer park ranger, and he starts to take them out one by one.
which sounds just like a really good time.
Yeah, that's what we, our company is called No Place to Party LLC. Like, that's what we labeled our production entity. It's a movie about partying and how when you're young, you just want to party, and adults keep telling you can't party, and they try to ruin your good time.
Now, I've seen so much buzz about this film, and especially in terms of labeling it punk rock horror, and there's several other acronyms like that. How do you feel that those are accurate descriptions of the film and or your style?
For The Ranger, absolutely. As a director, I'm really excited to discover different styles and different aesthetics based on the material. But for The Ranger, what we really wanted to do was bash together, 80s punk movies with 80s slashers, and then center it all around a girl who's trying to find herself. That was my goal. So in that, I wanted to look at these two worlds, the neons and the crazy colors and everything of the punk world, and then the vintage parkland types of vibes of the Rangers worlds, and then follow the punks into the national park and watch from a visual perspective and also from a musical perspective how those two worlds clash.
That sounds really exciting. Do you have I'm sure you have many great memories from set. Is there any that you'd like to share with us now?
So many awesome memories. It was such a fun experience. So we had a really small crew, a really small team. This was a total indie group of kids going out to the woods, making a movie together. And we only have, there's only a couple, 6 characters in the movie. So we really felt we were out in the middle of the woods. Like, we really had to climb mountains and stuff to get certain scenes. And we didn't have a ton of trailers or anything like that around. So it really felt very desolate. And I am terrified of the woods because I'm from the suburbs, and I've lived in LA, New York, and Philadelphia. So I haven't had a lot of time hanging out in the woods, which is maybe why I'm kind of attracted to it. But I would be scared that a bear would come onto set, and I was really scared about bear attacks. It might have just been a way. I think I was funneling my anxiety about making the movie through this anxiety about bears. I think that's actually what was happening. But fortunately, there were no bear attacks, so it was a success.
So you have no bear stories from The Ranger, actual bears?
We did not come across any actual bears, which is good. You don't want bear stories. But I did watch, I think another thing that fed into my fear of bears was that right before we started shooting, I watched the movie Backcountry. Have you seen it?
Yep.
It's a terrifying, don't watch it before you go into the woods. It's a terrifying bear story.
See, I grew up in small town Canada, so bears and wolves are pretty commonplace.
You're so used to it.
Yeah, it's but for me it's insects, right? Because we didn't have spiders because it gets so cold up there. You have them, but you don't ever really see them. They never really take full control like they do here in America because they're eradicated 8 months of the year. So, and we don't even have any poisonous that really get up to where I lived because they can't survive. So for me, I think it's a lot of the things that we don't see or that we're not used to.
Right.
But I remember being a child, and I've never been face to face with a bear, but I was on a school bus and people were like, "Oh, look, there's a grizzly bear," or some kind of bear. We didn't know what kind it was, let's be honest. But it was not too far away, a safe distance from the school bus. But we're like, "Oh, look, bear," or a giant wolf. On more than one occasion, I would be driving and be like, "Is that a dog? Nope, that's definitely a wolf. He looks pissed. I'm just going to keep driving."
We do have some wolves in The Ranger. So we got to work with real wolves, which was a very cool experience.
That must have been really frightening on some level, because seeing them from afar and actually working with them, two very different things.
Yeah, it was really cool. The wolves were really chill. We went to a wolf preserve in right near Canada, right near the border between New York and Canada. And we discovered that if you want to make a wolf howl, all you have to do is howl at the wolf, and then it'll start to howl. That was a cool discovery. And I don't know if it was just those wolves because they were in this like special place, or if it's all wolves, but they were like super chill and we got really close to them. Like I even touched one. So I no longer have a fear of wolves.
Well, they say that they're all, like, that all dogs are descended from wolves, right? And I look at my dog and I'm like, how can you be scary in any way, shape, or form? So looking at your IMDb, which also, by the way, I'll link down below, you wear many hats on many of the films that you work on. Producer, writer, director. Is there one that you prefer? And if so, why?
Now I'm obsessed with directing after the Ranger experience because I just loved it and had so much fun. And so, yes, I deeply love directing. That's the one I prefer. But I loved producing, and I really felt that, I mean, I'm so appreciative and grateful for all those experiences because they really taught me how to make movies. We're making these small movies, and as a producer, you're right in it. You're with the director. You're facing the challenges that they're facing. You're trying to figure out how to get things done. And also getting able to watch all these different directors that I was producing for, like, was really helpful in discovering different directors' styles and stuff, and dealing with the cast and aesthetic styles and stuff like that. So it was totally a wonderful experience. And I'm producing Larry Fessenden's movie right now, which is a modern day Frankenstein movie. Called Depraved.
It looks really cool. I was checking that out online today. Obviously, I just came across the poster art, but I was really impressed. I actually, not that I'm not very excited that Larry is directing it, but at first when I saw it on your IMDb, I thought it was your next one.
Oh.
Because, right, like, you know how, like, depending upon the format that you view it in, it'll either group them by category or by year.
Right.
So I thought I was on the one that's, like, by category, and then I was like, oh, gosh, darn it, that's just 2019. So which is your least favorite hat to wear?
I mean, just in terms of, well, it would be producing, but that's just because producing's hard. It is hard to produce small movies when you don't have the support team. It is hard. You're doing like a million jobs. So, yes, but it's very important as well.
So, as a woman in film, it's very common that at some point during your career, you appear in front of the camera. I noticed on your IMDb that you haven't as yet. Do you have any aspirations to try that?
I don't have any aspirations to try that. I'm very much excited by writing and directing, and that's kind of where my focus is. And I think actors, I'm in awe of them. I think they're extremely special people that have this talent, and that's amazing. And that it's also something I don't want to touch. I feel like I like looking at a story from the macro perspective. And I think it's so cool when actors can look at the character from this micro perspective and really get into the psychology of the character. And that's just not a space that I'm personally interested in going into.
But I love that. I feel so often people who do both sometimes don't realize that. I do, because I've done both. And it's, to me, that's like the difficult thing, is viewing it from your own perspective and then being able to view it as a whole, right? Because, like, as a character, your world is your immediate peripheral, what you want, what you need, which often and typically in genre films doesn't jive with everybody in the room.
Yeah.
Versus, like, overall, you've, like, got these beats and pacings and, character arcs, and you have to worry about all of them, and it's such a different perspective. So it's really refreshing to hear somebody like yourself wanting to focus on one instead of the other.
Yeah, well, I feel that way, about all the departments. What I think is so cool about making a movie is that all these different people have, like, superpowers, and you're bringing people together, and each person is using their strength and everyone's collaborating to make the movie happen. And that's the same thing with actors. And yeah, but what I find fun is bringing everybody together to do that.
Now, looking at your IMDb, I was really impressed with the caliber of talent you've worked with. I'm such a huge fan of Mickey Keating and the films that you've produced with him. Who are some of the colleagues that you love working with, and why?
Wow. Well, I love Mickey. Mickey is so fun. I produced Darling and Psychopaths.
Both fantastic and totally different. Like, one of the things I love about Mickey is you never know what you're going to get from me. Like, you're going to get a really great genre film, but everything else could be anything, It could be black and white. It could be artistic. It could be experimental. It might not be. It could be terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, I love that.
Yeah, aesthetically, Mickey does like really cool special things, and each one is different. And then just like Mickey's, if you've met Mickey, you know he's like one of the most enthusiastic people you will ever meet, which that makes working on a set with him so much fun because you can't help but also be enthusiastic. Like everybody is so happy on his sets. So Mickey is great, very lovely to work with. And Larry Fessenden is like my mentor. He's the most amazing mentor you could have. He really approaches everything from a creative perspective, from the artist's headspace. You know, he's a producer. When he's a producer on a movie, he's really approaching it from the artist's headspace, which is really lovely if you're directing and you have that person that you can turn to, and they're not looking at it from a budgetary perspective. They're not answering you in terms of like, oh, well, we might not have enough days to do this thing you want to do. He's fully coming at it from the artist's perspective. So it's been really cool. The first thing I produced at Glass Eye was his segment of ABCs of Death 2. And the most recent thing I've done is his Frankenstein movie. So it's been very cool working with him over the past 6 years on all these different projects.
Now, let's talk for a moment to the audience what being a producer on independent film in your experience entails. The reason why I like asking this and getting other people's opinion is because it really varies. You can ask 20 different producers on 20 different independent films, and they're all going to give you a different rundown of like what they did or what that means to them. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, what does it mean to you? Yeah,
well, on our films, producing is you're supporting the artist, you're supporting the director, and you're helping them execute their vision. And for us, because, well, the movies that I've been involved with have been small films, you know, I'm not just a producer, but also a line producer and a UPM and a production coordinating. And it's just like doing all those things so that the budget can go towards putting cool stuff on the screen, which has been incredibly rewarding and awesome. But there's different types of producers. There's creative producers. There's, you know, people that help get the movie financed. There's executive producers and whatnot. So all different types. But that's been my experience, is being in it with the director.
We just are finishing up the month of February, which is obviously Women in Horror Month. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
I think Women in Horror Month is awesome. And I think it's awesome because it really draws attention to women who are making horror movies. And I guess I feel two ways about this, just in general, when, you know, because there's a lot of women in horror is a very trendy thing right now, right? And whether we're talking about Women in Horror Month or like panels that are like Women in Horror, there's a lot of those right now. So on the one hand, I wish we lived in a world where we didn't need to point this stuff out and we could all just be treated as filmmakers and gender wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing that we had to think about. On the other hand, we are not there yet as a society. So until we get there, I think it's really cool and really important to be pointing it out and to be highlighting female filmmakers. And it's really important to you know, teenagers, female teenagers right now who are like, oh, maybe I want to be a filmmaker. When I was a teenager, I couldn't point to that many female filmmakers, and I couldn't quite see that was like a path for me. So I think it'll be really cool to have this like new generation of young women who, you know, they can see the path clearly for themselves.
Now, obviously, in the last 2 years, the Me Too movement has hit. Has the Me Too movement, have you seen any difference in any aspect of your career based on the Me Too movement in any way, shape, or form?
I think that it's just been really refreshing that we've all been able to talk about this. It used to be a taboo subject to even talk about. And now it's like women are talking about this and putting it out in the open. And I think, we're all supporting each other a lot more. Like, we're making an active choice to support each other a lot more. In the past, I don't think there wasn't necessarily the awareness that we needed to support each other in the same way. But now there's that awareness. And that's, look at the hard, not just hard, but like the big movie directors of the 70s, like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and Brian De Palma. Like, they were all friends with each other. There was there was healthy competition, but there wasn't, there's only allowed to be one of us at a time. Like, guys haven't had to go through that, but women, it's always been that there's an it girl, and we all feel this pressure that there's an it girl, and are you the it girl? Am I the it girl? Like, who's the it girl of the moment? And it's so cool and so refreshing that we're like finally getting out of that mentality, because actually it just keeps everybody down. And actually, The Ranger, there's a final girl in The Ranger, sorry, spoiler, kind of, but the whole movie is about, like, that's like what the movie is about. It's a movie that follows a final girl and discovers her inner workings, and it's a character study of a final girl. So I totally love the final girl trope deeply. I made a whole movie about it. However, recently I've had the revelation that with the final girl, it kind of has deeply, it kind of makes it, and it's another way of making one feel that there's like only one girl allowed to exist. Only one girl is allowed to exist till the end of the movie, is allowed to stay alive to the end of the movie. And when you're watching, as a young teenager, when you're watching these horror movies, you start to ask yourself, like, oh, well, I would be the final girl. I would definitely be the final, like, I'm not the bimbo that's going to get killed early. I'm definitely going to be smart and make the smart choices and be the final girl. And I think that on like a really deep level has kind of turned women against each other also. So maybe someday, Slumber Party Massacre is awesome because there's like several women that survive to the end, and they all help each other kill the killer. Maybe we'll see more ladies teaming up movies as we continue into the post-Me Too age.
I would love that, but I also love me a good body count, and I'm not going to lie, as an actor who has played the bimbo more times than I can count, I just feel like sometimes you need that in a movie.
No, totally, absolutely.
And also, like, I'm blonde, so I have to die first. I mean, typically, right? Like, my only hope is to dye my hair and not have sex.
Yeah, like, but that's been done many times.
So many times.
I think
so many.
We're in a post-blonde bimbo dies first age.
I hope so.
I think we can be more creative than that.
Fingers crossed. So what are some films that have inspired you?
So, when I was young, I was obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show, not the film. And the show played a big role in the way I developed as a person, because I was watching that in that tender age of, the tender time of like 10 years old to 12, 13 years old. For The Ranger, movies that we were very inspired by were like 80s punk movies like Class of 1984 and Repo Man and, of course, Return of the Living Dead. And then, kind of we took the approach of like Evil Dead in making it. And also, like, there's a movie Smithereens from the early 80s. That was Suburbia. And then movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. And yeah. And then, of course, I was very influenced because I was obsessed with them when I was younger, with the late 90s teen slasher movies too.
Oh, which are so great in so many levels.
Yeah.
I just appreciate them differently now.
Yeah.
Right, like I have a very different reaction watching them. I think it's really fascinating what you hit on, like when you're around the age of 10 or 12, because it's like really before life gets complicated, right? Mm-hmm. Not that life's especially complicated when you're like 15, 16, 17, but you think it is at the time. Mm-hmm. Like legitimately. It's not. like, whether that boy likes you or not does not matter, like, in the bigger picture.
Right.
But in your mind it is. But, like, when you're 10 and 11, you really have no responsibilities, like, for the most part, if you're lucky, you know, like, you just are living your best life, realistically.
Right, and you don't realize it.
No.
And everything feels, like, so dramatic.
I remember, like, desperately wanting to be 16 and then desperately wanting to be 20. And now I'm like, can I just go back to wanting to be 16?
Yeah, totally.
Now, what is the best piece of advice that you have for others about working in the industry?
Never give up. Perseverance. But I actually think, it sounds tacky, but I actually think that's true. Because it takes a long time to get things going. I take, like, every single stage of it. Actually, until the money is in the bank, it feels like the movie is never going to happen. So you must persevere. You must keep going in the face of rejection. If someone says, oh, no, it's not really for us, then be like, cool, man, and go to the next finance person and just keep going until you get that thing financed. But also, it works on many levels. Never give up. Chase your dreams. Don't be deterred. The only person that can stop you is you.
I love all that, and I think that that's all really great advice. I would add one, like, caveat to, like, listen to all of that, but to add to it, don't lie.
Yeah.
Because I find, like, people I don't feel like everybody intentionally lies, but I see a lot of people that burn bridges because they want to believe that meeting where they hope they're going to get the money is there, and then they'll go to their effects people and their actors and be like, I have the money, lock these dates. And then when that doesn't happen and these people have given up dates or time, that's when relationships get broken.
Yes.
And severed, and where you look like an asshole.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
don't do that.
lie.
Don't do that.
But do all that stuff. Just be really honest.
Yeah.
And the other thing, like, even, like, as an actor, I'm like, you can always come to me and be like, hey, look, I don't have the money. I'm working on it. I'm hopeful. Can you do me a favor and keep me posted if anybody asks you for these dates? Absolutely. I'll come to you.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be really careful of when you're asking people if they'd be interested in working on a project versus when you're actually having them commit to the project. There's a fine line there. Even if, obviously, if you have a contract, that's a totally different situation. But even just in your conversations, you do have to be careful about that for sure. Another piece of advice I would say is don't ask for permission. I think a lot of young filmmakers, especially young female filmmakers, feel the need that they, like, need permission, or they need someone to tell them, like, okay, you're ready to make this thing. And, like, don't wait for that permission. Like, you can make it. Like, it may not be it may not be the everything that you wanted because it's your first thing, but go out, make it, learn from the experience, and then make your next thing and make your next thing and just keep making stuff.
What I don't know about you, and if you have, please share. I've never heard of a filmmaker who's been like, yep, did everything I wanted to with this film. It's perfect. I'm done.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's just always, I think, no matter how much money you have, no matter how skilled you are, we as just people are constantly growing. So every time you do something, you're going to learn so much that the next one you're going to do is going to be so much better. This whole idea of, like, waiting, I see, like, a lot of that in LA. I don't know if you have that where you live, but there's a lot of, like, I have to wait till I get $5 million to make this movie. And the reality is, in 2019, if you're waiting for a large chunk of money, I'm not saying you'll never get it. I'm not saying you shouldn't chase it. I'm just saying if you need to create art, maybe continue chasing the 5 million and figure out something else that you're also really passionate about that you can do with a more realistic budget that is attainable.
Yeah.
Right? Like, go fight that, go pursue that. But let's be honest, as we go further and further in this world where, independent films are so common and so standard, budgets are forever shrinking for us. Going out saying, well, this famous person in the 80s made a first film for 3 million is not really comparable.
Right. Totally.
So I love that idea of just don't let anything stop you.
Yeah. Don't let anything stop you, but also do what you need to do. Like, have a lot of projects going. Have the 5 million project over here, but have the 50 grand project over here that you can raise that and be creative with that. And don't do that forever. Like, after you made your first movie, like, try to get bigger each time. Don't be the guy that's only making those size movies. But
unless that's what you want to do.
Unless you want to do, live your dreams. If that's your thing, do it. Yeah, have different size projects going, for sure.
What do you think are the biggest differences between Los Angeles and New York?
The weather and the traffic.
Anything about like the people or like the filmmaking community?
The filmmaking community in New York is very small but very tight. I was able to make a lot of friends, meet a lot of people very quickly. It's just a much more intimate setting. Just because there's so many things going on in New York, it's not the main industry of New York City. So, the film people all find each other. And in LA, it is the main industry it's Hollywood. So, it's much more of an industry. But I think both are awesome, and I think one should live in the place that speaks more to them. I've lived in LA. I live in New York right now. I would move back to LA if it made sense for me to move back. I deeply love both cities.
I have to say, I have an affinity for both. I haven't spent a lot of time in New York, and people ask me all the time, like, how do you pick between the two? So for me, when I was looking, because I lived in Ohio, and I was like, obviously New York was closer at the time, and I was like, well, two things. I had a car, and selling it, I would have lost money. So I was like, I still have some years left in this car that doesn't make any sense to get rid of, and having a car in New York is not the brightest move, in my opinion. And also, I'm a bad driver. So if you can't drive well, do not go to New York. I've driven there once, never again in my entire life will I ever do that. It was a nightmare. And $90 for overnight parking.
Yeah, it's very expensive.
So ridiculous. But then also, like, the cost of living was so much lower in LA. Mm-hmm. So that's my two tips of advice when people are like, where should I live if they don't live in one or the other?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, take that into account. If cost of living is a concern in LA, you can really find reasonably priced places to live. How would you recommend people assess where to live if they don't live in New York or LA?
So in New York, like, I had a car when I was living in LA, and then I got rid of it when I moved to New York, because you really don't need a car. There's subways, there's taxis, you can walk, people walk. You can walk down the sidewalk and see other people walking down the sidewalk, which is more rare in LA. Mm-hmm. So, it's, what are you more into? What's your vibe? What's your way of living? What are you more inspired by? There's different types of architecture in both of these areas. But both cities are totally lovely. And then in terms of filmmaking, I mean, there's more television shows. There's more stuff, more industry stuff happening in LA. So what do you want to get involved in? Do you want to get involved in indie film? Not that there's not indie film in LA, because there certainly is. But there's a lot of it in New York. So it really just depends on you as an individual and your ultimate goals for what you want to accomplish. And yeah.
Now, what is next for you?
So I have a creepy boarding school movie that I've written. So hoping that'll go soon. And yeah, The Ranger. So The Ranger's on Blu-ray and DVD, available on Amazon. But it is coming to Shudder soon. So keep an eye out for that. So there's going to be a whole bunch of Ranger stuff we're doing very soon too.
And I will put links to all of that down below. And then also the movie that you are producing with Larry.
Yep.
What is that looking like as far as release? Or do you know anything?
We don't know yet. We're in post right now, so hopefully we'll have info very soon.
And do you tend to do festival screenings or independent screenings with your films typically? I know The Ranger did a very successful festival run.
Thank you. No, we're obsessed with festivals. I'm obsessed with festivals. I love festivals. It's like all I want to do is go. Last year with The Ranger, I tried to go to as many festivals as possible. And it was like the dream, the perfect year. I loved it so much. So yes, we're big fans of festivals. And it's just like in the world that we live in right now, the festival circuit is kind of like your theatrical release when you're a small movie. Mm-hmm. So really taking advantage of that, using the festival circuit for your movie in terms of press, is really just, to generate buzz, is really just an accessible way for small filmmakers to get the word out about their movie.
What are some of your favorite festivals that you experienced?
South by Southwest is amazing. So The Ranger premiered there, and then I had 2 movies that I produced that premiered there. It's so much fun. Austin is a great city. Fantastic Fest is also so much fun. And there's 2 different parts of the year. You have March and you have September. So it gives you 2 reasons to go to Austin over the course of the year. We had such a great time at Fright Fest in London.
Oh, I love that one so much. I was there. I've been there before. They're great.
Yeah.
They premiered Truth or Dare.
Yeah, it's insane. It's like the guys that run it are so much fun. They really want.
And you met all 4, right?
Yep.
Okay, because sometimes people don't meet all 4, and they'll be like, no, there's not 4. I was like, oh no, trust me, there are. You just, not everybody meets all 4 of them, because they're all like 4 completely different human beings, which I love.
Yeah, it's very
and they
cool.
all they love like different movies, and they go to different screenings, so like they're not all like the same person.
Yeah, no, they're so lovely. They really made us feel at home there. We had an amazing time there. I went to Morbido in Mexico City, and that was really cool because they took us, it was cool for a lot of reasons, but also they took us to visit pyramids, which was like my favorite, one of my favorite experiences from the festival circuit. So yeah, I mean, Chattanooga Film Festival is really fun. It's like such a good place to bond with other filmmakers. They take you on field trips and stuff. Yes, lots of good film festivals out there.
So you mentioned festivals. I'm such a huge fan. What is some of your advice for fellow filmmakers doing a successful film festival run?
Figure out the festival that makes sense for your movie. Figure out what your movie is, do your research, figure out the vibe and the tone of the different festivals, because they're even hard, like even a bunch of horror festivals have very different tones. So figure out the right place to premiere, because that's going to be really important. Once you've submitted and you're in the festival, use that festival to generate buzz as much as possible. So by that I mean, like, leading up to your premiere date, that's the time when you want to start releasing things like posters and trailers, really creating a lot of excitement about the big premiere. And then, you know, we tried to play as many festivals as possible with the Ranger, and it was really lovely because it was just like an experience to go. We started talking about it as like we were on tour, and we got to go like from city to city and like meet all the people in those cities, and it was like so cool and so fun to meet all those people. So really embrace the festival circuit and think of it in a long-term way, and then just like enjoy it.
Do you know how many film festivals the Ranger played at?
It played over 50.
That's so fantastic. Do you know how many awards it won? Because I know it was winning a lot.
I don't know. I don't think it won that many. It won some. We won like...
It did very well.
Thanks. We won like some audience awards, but we won like best like soundtrack at a couple places, and we won at one festival movie that most deserves to be turned into, or that most deserves a sequel. So yeah, it was fun. It was a cool experience.
Well, like managing expectations, it's funny how sometimes people don't quite get that. Obviously, when you're playing these bigger festivals like South by Southwest, if you're the lowest budget movie that's screening, I'm not saying you won't win an award. I'm just saying manage expectations.
Oh yeah, it's
right?
important.
Like, it's great if you get in there, but realistically, is the audience going to pick your movie or pick that $10 million movie with a star in it? Right? Like, I would say they should pick the Ranger.
Yeah.
But they often don't.
Yeah. It depends. It depends on the festival. There's so many variables, but overall, it's just like getting to go to the festival and experience it is just so joyful.
Well, thank you so very much for coming on. It was an absolute honor.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
So I'm going to put all the links down below. Definitely keep in touch with her. She is one to watch. And for you guys here over on Scream Queen Stream, don't forget to hit the like button down below and also subscribe. We produce new videos every single week and 10 billion bonus points if you join the Patreon. Thanks, guys.